Hi, and this is my channel. This is the first recording I'm doing for this channel, and it's a bit ad hoc at the moment, so it's all new and interesting. So the purpose of what I would like to do is I have a passion for development, and what I used to do when I was in high school is I used to write text adventures like Zork and Adventure and all of that kind of stuff. But me and my friends, we used to do it from scratch. And many years later, I am a software developer doing C# in Windows, and I've always wanted to actually write a game, but I've never really got off my butt and actually tried to do one. So I am using this channel as a kind of incentive and to push me along to actually write something that not only I would enjoy playing, but hopefully other people would enjoy playing as well. I'm a .NET developer, so we're going to be doing this in .NET. We're going to be using .NET Core. We're going to be putting together a multi-user dungeon that is accessed via Telnet, and I hope it'll be a lot of fun. And all of the development will be done on Windows. It'll be done using Visual Studio Community Edition. So, if you guys want to follow along or contribute or try stuff out yourself, you'll be able to do so. You don't have to, it's all freely available to do so. So it's going to be very ad hoc. This is all unscripted, and it probably shows. And going forward, I might change that. But hopefully, we'll have fun. And yeah, so let's get started. So I have a project in Visual Studio, and these projects are kind of scaffolding of what I know we're going to need. We're going to have a service, and that service is basically a program that runs in the background all of the time. Windows has lots of services, and if you go to the service manager from the control panel, we can do that right here. If we go services.msc, we can see we have all of these kind of services. Some are running, some are run on demand, others are disabled, and other things come up as you need them. In the Unix world and Linux, services also exist, but they're in a kind of a different format. But hopefully by using .NET Core, we can do both. So I would like to eventually have this run on both Windows and the server actually running on Unix for a little bit of a challenge as well. So we'll be looking at the differences between Windows and the differences between Unix and how to get that actually up and running and going. I'll be using Git as a source control. Git is something that I'm very used to. I have a Git server here. You may be familiar with other Git services like GitHub and so forth. Might be doing some continuous integration work, and actually we'll also potentially be using some DevOps software to actually push out updates to the server when we're in position to do so. So this is kind of a full stack kind of thing, from inception to design to implementation to release to actually get it up and using. We'll need a database, so we can look at using different kinds of databases. We can use SQLite. We might use SQL Server moving forward, depending on how many clients we have access, how many people are interested in doing it. We'll use some software known as an ORM. An ORM is a layer, essentially, that allows you to encapsulate your data into what's known as objects. And an ORM stands for an object relational model. And it allows you to logically combine data into something that's more useful and easier to handle in your software. Anyway, enough of me messing around and talking about stuff. So anyway, we're going to need a service. We're going to need some data. where we're going to put stuff. What are we going to put? We're going to have people logging in. We're going to need the concept of a user. We're going to need the concept of the world, how the world is generated. Hopefully we'll do some procedural generation, which would be pretty cool. Probably not in the beginning, but that's something that we'll do. I haven't really quite thought about the world as such. It might be some science. I'm quite a big sci-fi fan, so there'll probably be elements of that in there. We'll need to keep track of inventories. We'll need to keep track of player locations. We'll probably have some NPCs, non-player characters that you can interact with. And so we'll have to deal with how they traverse the world. And maybe you need to go and visit some of them to get items to go through. I'd like to see some trading, maybe some in-game currency kind of stuff. So maybe some markets, maybe some trade wars kind of stuff, maybe space trader kind of stuff, maybe some banking. I think that is certainly possible. One of the things that I didn't like with a lot of games is you go in, you deposit some money in some kind of virtual bank, and then there's, you go away and you come back and there's no interest charge and stuff like that. So we might think about doing that as well. Basically just have fun doing it. So at the moment we have our scaffold, I call it. These are basically just boilerplate stuff that we'll have to generate. These are .NET 5 console applications, and this is a class library, and this is a dependency on this. We're going to use things like dependency injection, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about version control. We'll talk about that and how to use that. We might do some message bus stuff. We'll need some caching between the database and the actual players, because obviously we don't want to be, for things that don't change a lot. So for example, the player's inventory doesn't change a lot. So you might only write that information if the player picks something up or drops something. That information is written into the said database, but when normally that's held in memory, and so you don't actually have to, if you're just displaying the inventory, you wouldn't have to go back to the database to load it again. Yeah, so we can start. So we're gonna have a data layer, and we're gonna have a game layer, right? So the data layer will talk to the database, and the game layer will contain objects like the world, the player, the inventory, that kind of stuff. And then the service will essentially present the Telnet port open to the world, and then it will hand off to clients, and then each client will be responsible for communicating with the actual player on the other end of the keyboard, and obviously displaying text as well as things. We might have some images, but it's mainly going to be text-based, mainly going to be Telnet-based. We can do maybe some ASCII art, something like that. That'd be kind of interesting if we can do that. Do we want in-game messaging? We probably do want in-game messaging between players. Do we want to create guilds or factions and stuff like that? That'd be kind of interesting, and then we figure out how we can do that. Do we want to send notifications when things happen? Like your players died, and then it sends a text message or an email to say, oh, you were killed by so-and-so at this time. It's something that we might explore doing. So anyway, what I've got here is I have, again, the data layer, the service layer, but what we need to do is we need to create another class library called the game layer. So we're going to go new project here. We're going to go class library. We're going to go next, and we're going to say Telnet Mud game layer. This is where we're saving it on my hard drive here. And so we're going to get rid of this class here. Get rid of him. Probably turn it down a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to have, we could do things like, for instance, we'll do things like, we'll have world orientated things, and we'll have other things like player orientated. And we'll also need things like up in here, we're definitely going to need things like, so in our data, we want to perhaps differentiate between system data, things like configuration items, like for example, if we're going to be storing passwords, we're going to want to store things like salts and stuff like that. How many people are online, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And then we're going to have do we have game in here? System, data, world. We'll call it mud because, yeah. And then in here, we're going to have something like user. User. Yeah, that's fine. And we're going to have, so in here, we'll also need to have something along the lines of another class library. See, I like to differentiate a lot. I like to compartmentalize and split up my code into very distinct things. So telnet mud dot data dot db. So this is the stuff that's going to be writing into the database. Yeah, and inside here we're also going to have something called mapping. So this is basically going to take the, so what we're going to have is we're going to have objects that are stored into the database, and when we load those objects, they're going to be, because they're using ORM, they're going to be tied to the ORM, which means that what can happen is you can change, when you change the properties on there, it can also get easily transposed to the database, which may or may not be a good thing. Normally what happens is you're going to want to do perhaps some serialization and things like that. Of course, what we might have is we might have some differentiation. You know, we may have different services. We might have like a database server, which we might expose an API to, and then that would, you would definitely separate out your business objects, your logical objects from your database objects. So normally you wouldn't be passing around your database objects because they can come with baggage like connections to the actual database and things like that. So what we're going to have in here is we'll have a mud user, which is the data, but inside here what we'll do is we will create called entities, and inside here we will call this guy user, but he's going to be the DB user, DB underscore user. So he's differentiation to say, hey, we're going to go DB. And then we're going to have another class in here. Now we'll set up a bunch of stuff. I have some other code, which I will be bringing in bits and bobs kind of thing as we go. And some of that already deals with mapping and stuff like that. But one of the things that we will use is inside here. We're going to use a nugget package. Now nugget, I call it nugget. Some people pronounce it nougat. I call it nugget because like they're little nuggets of code, right? So that's how they do it. So things like Newtons.json is quite popular. There's JSON serialization. Mock is for testing. So you use that too. And we'll put some unit tests in as well because unit tests are important. You know, test-driven design is important. That's something we should be doing, like XUnit is there. But we're going to be using something called AutoMapper. And that helps us map object to object. So we'll create a map between the DB user to a user and vice versa. And you essentially set up your map. And then you can easily make a call to say, hey, we're going to go from this object to this object. And then this piece of code says, yeah, cool, awesome, we'll do that. So we'll install that. We will need that. Oh, I've got an inch on the back of my neck. We'll say, okay, good. All we can do now is just say, okay, we're just going to build. Can we build this? Are they going to build? Yep, 0 errors, 0 warnings. We're still building. Great, cool. Right, so in our user, and I should probably go away and actually talk about this a bit more into what we're actually trying to do, which I will do. So perhaps that's a good place to stop it for now. Anyway, thanks for listening. Take care.